Again, good morning, everyone. So happy to see so many people excited about Travel Tourism Week. Aren't you guys excited? That's awesome. My name's Elliot Ferguson. I have the pleasure of being the president of Destination DC. I'm hoping you all know that we're the organization that focuses on promoting DC as a convention and tourism destination. And man, am I happy to be here this year with some good news. You know, we've been focusing on so many things tied to recovery. And so as we do these events every year, thanks to Roger and the U.S. Travel Association, it's good to be here at Hylon, this really cool venue in Union Market. Now, how many of you have not been to Union Market in a long time? Just raise your hands. All right. So not only do you have an opportunity to enjoy this amazing rooftop, but on your own time, at another time, come back and enjoy some of the great restaurants and some of the cool things that happen here in Washington, specifically in this area. We love this part of the city because, you know, a lot of folks say, you know, you do a lot to showcase downtown Washington, D.C., and that's not true. But, you know, there's certain realities. A lot of the infrastructure is there. But I love the fact that we're able to get out in neighborhoods and showcase how amazing our destination is, especially to folks that are coming into the city. So we all know that we're still dealing with COVID, and that is at the front of the minds of a lot of people as we're focusing on recovery. But today is really about some of the positive news as we look at moving forward. And we'll continue to focus on the rebound of tourism and the rebound of our industry, which is important. So the data tells us that 2019, we were really doing well. Things were, it took us 10 years to recover after 9/11. But 2019 was a pivotal year as we had so many visitors coming into Washington. And then, of course, we had 2020, which was not a good year for us. We were down 50%. We lost so much in terms of jobs and economic impact. But 2021, which is what we're here to talk about, was a positive year for us. Now, specific to domestic tourism, we had 18.8 million visitors come to Washington. And that's great because that's about 80% of where we were in 2019, and actually better than what was forecasted as we were still dealing with the pandemic. Visitors spent about $5.4 billion, and we had about 58,000 jobs tied to this industry. Now, the reality is, overall, the visitors that came to Washington did not spend as much as they do in traditional years, and we all know why. People were looking for locations to go, whereas they were compromised financially, and they were still wanting to get out and enjoy destinations. So the fact that, thanks to the mayor and so many of you all, we have 100 free plus things to do in the city, we became a destination that folks came to, even though the spend was not there. Now, the overseas data, you'll hear from Chris Thompson later on about what we're doing in terms of promoting the U.S. But overseas, it's going to take longer for international visitation to recover, perhaps 2023 and beyond, for a variety of reasons. A large part of what U.S. Travel, Roger Dow and his team are focusing on is tied to getting international visitors back into the city. But before the pandemic, again, we were doing well. And things were on track in terms of the economic boom tied to this industry. So the question is, what are we doing now? How are we getting back on track as a destination? For us, it's about the things that people know about Washington and, of course, things in which people are enjoying for the first time, including Union Market. Our marketing is tied to all things associated with our destination. How to attract visitors, the same visitors that every city in the United States is going after, smaller markets and larger markets. The question is, how do we do it? Now, we're fortunate that we are a membership-based organization, private nonprofit, but we, as we're looking at our marketing, it's tied to the 1%, less than 1% that we get of the hotel tax, which makes up about 80% of our overall marketing budget on any annual year. So when you think about the fact that people weren't staying in hotels and you're not collecting those dollars, then what do? Then you rely on your stakeholders, such as Events DC, specifically last year, with the infusion of $3 million to help us promote DC during a time which was not that great. And I appreciate the fact that Events DC led that round of applause, but they do deserve that. And then the question is, okay, we're still dealing with this economic downturn, so what do? So this year, as we're looking at marketing our destination, and the mayor is looking at all the variables tied to keeping the city afloat, we received $5 million in our budget specifically to market Washington as a destination. And thank you to our mayor and to City Council for giving us those dollars. Those dollars allow us to keep the Experience DC campaign ongoing. Now, we know that monuments, memorials, and museums are part of the reason why people visit Washington, but Experience DC is what we want them to do. We want them to come for the reasons they traditionally know, but then get into our neighborhoods and enjoy unique and cool opportunities, especially for those who have not been here for a long time. And the question that was asked to me earlier is that, well, how effective is your marketing and advertising? Now, I'm going to say it's great because we see people coming to the city. But Destination Analysts, an organization that actually focuses on the effectiveness of marketing, says that 60% of those that visited Washington came because of the Experience DC campaign and showcasing unique things and perhaps they didn't know about our destination. So advertising does work, so thank you to our mayor for those additional dollars and to Events DC for those dollars as well that help us to do that. We focus on things such as the local community, regional visitors, and national visitors. 1/3 of the population lives within 4 hours of Washington, D.C. And as we were looking at rebounding last year, that played a huge part of what we were focusing on. And our creative team has been focusing on things all tied to Washington, our community, the international feel of our community, Chocolate City, Go-Go, and the likes. And you'll see some of the signage. You guys hold up those great signs that really showcase how we're promoting Washington, thanks to our creative team that's in-house. We focus on culture, we focus on food, history, family members. These are the things in which the data tells us that folks are looking for as they're going and choosing where they're going to go as a destination. Of course, nightlife, theater, outdoor activities, sports, and the likes. These things are also incredibly important to visitors. Retail, the list goes on and on. The fact that once again we have Gee Whiz from the Wizards and Slapshot from the Caps. Where are they? They're not that hard to find, but there they are in the back. Yeah, jumping up and down with us again really helps showcase the cool sports that we have in Washington. Last year we did this at Audi Field, and we know that the Washington Spirits are the national champions as of last year. So think about it, 2018, 2019, 2021, we are a team, a city that has great sports team that win championships. So we're excited about that, and that's a huge part of how we market Washington. And we also have a lot of events in which we have to showcase as reasons as to why people come to Washington. The National Cherry Blossom Festival, the large number of people that come to Washington because of the Cherry Blossom Festival, including youth travel. Events DC's Broccoli City Music Festival, which is coming up this weekend, and we're excited about. And of course, we all saw the announcement that Pharrell is bringing the Something in the Water Festival to Washington over Juneteenth weekend. DC Jazz Festival over Labor Day. I think the key thing for us is that we're looking at events that will bring people to the city over times where we actually need the business. So we love the fact that we have these great opportunities to promote our destination in a unique way. If you've never done Passport DC, let me tell you, nowhere in the world can you go into an embassy, enjoy the food, the culture, the music, and when you're in an embassy, few people know this, you're actually in that country. So just imagine asking, what'd you do this weekend? Well, I went to 5 countries in one weekend in Washington, D.C. That's Passport DC. That's something in which we also focus on as we look at promoting our destination. The global community loves the fact that only in Washington, D.C. can you enjoy something like that. And then, of course, there are other events like the 100th anniversary of the Lincoln Memorial that the National Park Service is going to be showcasing this year, which we're going to be focusing on as well. And, of course, so many different events and activities throughout the city. Now, Deputy Mayor Falchecchio, I think he was here, but I know he's always moving around. So as you look at economic development in the city, this gentleman and his amazing team are part of the reason, of course, with our mayor, why we have so many great projects that are ongoing in our city. The $10.3 billion in investment not only resonates for Washingtonians, but also for visitors to the city. Right here in Noma, I know that does deserve a round of applause. Right here in Noma, we're not only seeing new restaurants and shops, but of course new hotels that are popping up. And I love when I say that in front of other hoteliers because they're like, oh, more hotels in Washington. But the reality is there are hotels in parts of the city that people may not have stayed in before. So we're attracting new visitors to the city that is really appealing to us. And of course, the second phase of the wharf, which will be opening in October, which brings more restaurants, more hotels, and the like. Now, I talked about the food scene. And when we do this internationally, and they say, of course, you're going to say DC's cool and you have a great food scene because that's your job. And it is my job to say how great DC is. But when Michelin comes to the U.S. and chooses Washington as the fourth city to basically showcase how amazing the food scene in Washington is, that's a big deal for us. And the new Michelin Guide is coming out soon, another opportunity to showcase how cool the food scene is in Washington. Now, I talked to Kathy Hollinger, the CEO of the Restaurant Association. She's on a train to Rhode Island for a board meeting. But we know that the Rammies is coming up, are coming up very soon. And that's yet another opportunity for us to showcase and recognize how great the culinary scene is in Washington as a whole. Now, no one is more excited about the rebound and the opportunity to talk about Washington through a different lens than is my team and, of course, our industry. But let's just face it, as I say to the mayor every year, and she clears her calendar to specifically come to the travel rally, that this is the opportunity for our mayor and our city leaders to really to be recognized for all they've done to make sure that this industry is on the front of minds of not only the local community, but the global community. And it's been a tough time to be in a leadership role in any city, and especially in the nation's capital. So from the pandemic to protests and everything else that have been happening in the city, she's been focusing on keeping us safe, keeping visitors safe, and making sure the messaging is clear. And let's just face it, during a pandemic, the messaging is never going to be clear because it's going to continue to change. That's our reality. But she's been focusing on the safety of residents and visitors alike. And of course, the economics tied to what she's done for the city has been extremely important. So now, more than ever, and some of you applauded earlier, and some of you said, yeah, that's great. When our mayor gets up here, I need to hear a lot of noise. I don't need to hear the construction. I need to hear the folks on this rooftop recognizing and appreciating all our mayor has done. So please recognize Mayor Muriel Bowser.
Well, good morning, everybody. I am really happy to be with you. I'm really pleased to hear the report that Elliot Ferguson just gave. Give Elliot and the team at Destination DC a big round of applause. I've been to a couple of briefings with the travel industry, and let's just say they were somber. This briefing was optimistic, and there's reason for optimism, and the reason is DC is open, and I want everybody to spread that word and everybody to check out our destination. We are very proud to be here in Union Market, a part of our city that's changing every time I visit. There's something new to discover, and what we hear, Elliot, is the sign and sound of progress. And we have in all 8 wards of the District of Columbia people working, people building housing, people creating new destinations. I love Destination DC events because even I'm introduced to new venues. And I know all the venues. But isn't the High Lawn fantastic? When I come to new venues, I'm always envisioning what can happen here, and I have an idea that I'm happy to share. And so we are, as Elliot said, on the rebound. 2019 was a banner year for travel in DC. 25 million visitors coming to DC for work, vacations, field trips, coming from the states around us in all 50 states, but also coming from abroad. They recognize what they get in DC. They can have history, sports, theater, and music beautiful parks, a world-class convention center, amazing hotels, and friendly hospitality professionals waiting to welcome here. In fact, we know, as Elliot has mentioned, that right here in Union Market, there will be even more opportunities to welcome visitors and guests. And while they're introducing new hotel rooms, introduces some competition, but what it says to me is that we have something for everybody. No matter your budget, where you're coming from, the size of things you like to do, if you want it quiet or you want it more lively, we have something for everyone in Washington. And no one wants a stale destination, do we? Because one thing that I've heard from all of my visits and trips with Destination DC is we always want to be talking about something new. And we have something new in Georgetown, where I just visited, our refurbished C&O Canal. We have something new with the Planet Word, where lots of people are going to visit. We have something new in all 8 wards, where visitors can find out more about us, Washingtonians, more about their nation, and just have a lot of fun. The rumors that we're boring in D.C. are all wrong. People like to party. We have a great food scene here that just gets better and better. The investments that we will make in making sure that people know about our fantastic destination are well spent. We know that Destination DC goes out around the world to talk about what we do, and that investment helps us do everything else. Hospitality for Washington is not fun and games. It's dollars and cents. It's people working. It's people having good paying jobs that allow them to raise their families. So that's why we're doing everything we can, not just to market, but to bring back our guests. And we have invested in several grants that will allow us to do that. From sponsoring large festivals, not only do we want the festivals to happen, DC wants to be a partner, and we will continue to do that. So we know that the last 2 years have been unprecedented and unpredictable, but we have been rolling with it, responding to it, fighting it, and winning. And I can't wait to welcome more people to my hometown in the best city in the world, and soon to be the 51st state, Washington, D.C. See you in all 8 wards.
You know, sometimes after a speech like that, words like that, you just drop the mic, because she really said it all in terms of the importance of our industry and how important we all are as we look at the economics of Washington as a whole. And yes, there is a little competition, but it's okay. I could talk a little louder. You know, for us, coming to Union Market and being able to appreciate this part of our city gives us a chance again to showcase the uniqueness that Washington has as a destination, be it, you know, doing the movies outside, the great food scene here, which continues to change, and of course, for a lot of you who actually just walked from home to the rooftop here, that's what I love about Washington, is that it continues to evolve in a way that benefits all of us. A large part of that evolution is the international food scene that Washington has to enjoy on a regular basis. And I spoke about the Michelin Guide earlier, and let me tell you, there's nothing better than a small restaurant, a homegrown restaurant, opening in your city and showcasing it in a way that visitors can come and enjoy. There's certain ones that get a lot of international appeal, and it's our job and our goal to continue to focus on making sure that visitors know about other parts of the city and the opportunities that they have to dine. Chef Dina Daniel represents one of those amazing opportunities here, right here in Union Market. Fava Pot, I've not been yet, but I'm going. I'm fixing to go soon. Is right here in Union Market. Her award-winning Egyptian cuisine, from what I understand, because I haven't gone yet, but I will, has not only been recognized by the Food Network, but is a huge reason as to why visitors internationally and domestically come to Union Market. I love the fact that Washington has a strong international influence, over 180 plus embassies. I never say the exact number because I'm always wrong, but I know there are a lot. But we know that those embassies and that international appeal really resonates, and it influences how Washington is perceived as a destination. A huge part of what we focus on is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this is not new for our organization at all, but this is something that clearly has been resonating more now than ever. Looking at minority-owned businesses in Washington, smaller companies that don't have the resources to do what some of the larger organizations do. Through Destination DC, we've decided to offer opportunities through scholarships, through our Partnerships and Alliances Department, to work a lot more closely with those smaller organizations, to make sure that they understand that they're important, and equally as much how they can get a piece of that 25+ million. And I use that number because hopefully we'll be back at that number of visitors very soon. So those benefits include marketing their organizations, networking, and exposure in a lot of different ways. And Chef Dina Daniel, for us, represents that international appeal, and she's one of those organizations that has taken advantage of the DEI Fellowship Program. So at this time, it's my pleasure to welcome Chef Dina Daniel to the podium.
Wow, this is great, and this is a privilege and honor to be here. Thank you so much, Elliot. Thank you so much, Destination DC. I never, ever dreamed in my life to stand in front of a crowd like you guys. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. So, my name is Dina Daniel. I'm immigrated from Egypt in 2004. And DC was my first destination. And still it is my destination. And it is funny to know that, like, to share with you that my first job in DC was at guest house in Woodley Park called DCN's. And DCN's, it's like top-notch of the bed and breakfast in DC. And when you move to a new country, you see it with different eyes. And I learned in DCN's, where I worked for 2 years, about the travel and hospitality in DC. They are located across from Marriott Woodman Park, so most of our guests was people who was going to the conference at the Marriott Woodman Park, and they come to stay at the guest house. At that time, I never dreamed that one day I will have a restaurant, but I had a challenge at that time. I couldn't find an Egyptian meal in DC. I find everything. I find Indian, Lebanese, and all of them are great restaurants, except the Egyptian restaurants. Then my career took me to a nonprofit, which I worked with them for 6 years, and my eager to have Egyptian food in the city keep growing. So I decided to quit my job in 2013 and start a food truck. And it was the first Egyptian food truck in DC metro area. I don't need to talk about it a lot, but it was tears, sweat, and blood. And let me tell you something, don't take the city for granted. Like, the support that I find here and the success that I find in DC, I cannot take it for granted. It's after God's grace, it is the system that you have in place. When I started the food truck, I was 44 years old. At that age in my country, they asked us to retire, not to think about starting my own business. I never worked in the street. And I'm really thankful to God first, then to every single person I met. Starting with the health inspector who gave me the license, the county, everywhere. I couldn't believe, like, I was wondering why they are very much helpful to me. But even when the downtime, like, I want to sell my business, I don't want to keep in business because first 3 years it was extremely tough. The community, like the mechanical across from us, he kept supporting me and sharing with me his experience when he quit his job and started this. So I really, based on experience, consider DC, it's a city of opportunity. If you work hard you will get somewhere. It is not you work hard and there is no future. And another thing about DC that really I love it, I'm from Cairo. Cairo is a beautiful city by all means. I invite all of you to visit Cairo one day. But this is what I love about DC. I traveled to America many times before I immigrated, but I never came to DC. I went to New York, I went to many places. DC, the beautiful of the countryside, the landscaping with the culture, the architect, you cannot find it anywhere else. So it is placed like full of peace and rest. Like people love to come to DC. So that's why I wanted to start, I want to introduce my culture, the Egyptian culture, to the DC people because I know it will be a good marriage between both of them. So after 4 years of doing the food truck, I started the first restaurant in Falls Church, and it is owned by the same developer who owns Union Market. And I never thought about DC as DC because I thought it's only for people who has money to be able to come to DC and have their small business. And it came the opportunity again in Union Market where I started my fava pot 3 months before the pandemic. When the pandemic started, I thought this is the end. And let me tell you something. Again, I don't take it for granted because pandemic, it's globally. And all my family and relatives and friends, they are in Egypt. And I know the struggle that everyone went through the pandemic. I would never imagine, and now I'm not talking only about the system, about DC destination, about the government, I'm talking about the community. How everyone came together, and always they are telling me one word: we want to find you here after pandemic is over. And if I keep talking about these 2 years, yes, it has a lot of challenge, it has a lot of fear, uncertain, but I have seen a new version of the community during these 2 years. And I don't take it for granted. These 2 years opened my eyes why this city is so great. It is not government doing and people receiving. It's everyone doing together. And that is a remarkable thing. And then DC destination came in. I applied for the scholarship with the DEI and I got it accepted. And again, I will not take it for granted because I immigrated here in 2004, not that far. I was 35 years at that time. And I know that I can get a lot of scholarship like this in my country or somewhere else, and it is just a scholarship. The support that I have been receiving from day one until the day I'm standing in front of you now, it is, wow, amazing. I can keep talking about it a lot. So God bless you, every single one. Seriously, I see now, my dream now is not about introducing Egyptian food only. No, my dream now, one day I will have an Egyptian town in DC, like Chinatown, where everyone, and it will happen. I promise you it will happen. Maybe not in my days, but it will happen. So we will find, because our hospitality known since Jesus came as a refugee to Egypt, and you guys are the best friendly people ever. So we will be able to have it. So I want to thank DC Destination. I want to thank the mayor. I want to thank every single person in the community who helped every small business to stay. We don't take it for granted. It is not the Triple P. It is not the grant that we got. It is the community too who just stepped in and they said, we want you to be open. Even our landlords who stepped in and said, we need to help you guys. So today we have 2 tokens to thank you. It's very small. We have gift cards which DC Destination will distribute it to you. I'm arguing you, please visit our restaurant and use the gift card. And we are sampling koshari, which, Terry, are you here? Terry, my co-worker, and she's American, and she's now expert in cooking koshari, and she loves koshari. You can tell them about the koshari, and she will wait for you downstairs to sample the koshari.
Hello, everybody. My name is Terry. I'm a cook at Fava Pot. I'm just inviting everybody to come down and have a sample of koshari. It's just a mix of rice with lentils, pasta, spicy salsa, and chickpeas. So when you're ready, come on down.
It's a vegan item too, so any vegan people here will love it. And after you finish, guys, give love to Union Market vendors. All of them are small business. You will take a tour, international tour downstairs. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Now, can't you appreciate the passion tied to what she's brought to Washington, D.C.? And we all know that when you cook with passion and love, you taste it. So I'm looking forward to going downstairs and enjoying it and coming on a regular basis, like the rest of you, right? All right, it's awesome. All right. Quickly, as we talk about recovery, it's also about what's happening at the convention center and in hotels with conventions that are happening. International Trademark Association is finishing up today with over 6,000 international delegates that are in Washington, D.C. And the fact that we're seeing 19 citywides return to the city. In a good year, we have over 20 plus. That's good news for us. So Samuel Thomas, the interim CEO of Events DC, and his amazing team, thank you all for taking care of these great customers. Samuel has been doing what he's doing at Events DC for a long time and doing an amazing job. This is important because we're talking this year 395,000 room nights, $265 million in economic development tied to those meetings happening in Washington. And there's so many different unique things such as connected capital that we do, whereas we look at those assets, those professionals that are in Washington, D.C. that help us promote D.C. So just imagine International Trademark coming. And we talk to locals that have worked in an international level about how they can augment their programs when they're in Washington as a whole. So we're excited about that, as well as some of the short-term corporate bookings in which we've done in the city. Pretty soon we'll be going to our first international trade show, IMEX Frankfurt, at the end of this month, and we'll have a chance to really, again, showcase Washington to international meeting planners that are looking at coming to our city. I talked international earlier only to say that it's not rebounding quite yet, but there are some things that are happening, including the fact that we have international visitors at International Trademark. And while domestic visitation is a huge part of what we're focusing on, we cannot forget the fact that international visitors are 7% of visitors to Washington, but 27% of the spend. So as an economic development organization, you bet we want more international visitors coming to Washington. Our offices around the world, UK, France, Germany, and our reps in China, India, and Australia continue to advise us to keep doing what we're doing in terms of going after those markets and to focus on all efforts, not only for Washington, but the region through Capital Region USA, whereas we work with the state of Maryland, Virginia, and the Airports Authority to promote Washington as a whole. Roger Dow, U.S. Travel Association's IPW is coming up in June in Orlando, and yet another opportunity for us to interface with that international market. So as easy as it is for me to talk about the international market, why not get Chris Thompson? He's not doing anything this morning. He's right here with Brand USA, a great friend, and trust me, Chris is always super busy, but he and his team continue to focus on all efforts tied to getting the international market to rebound. I've had the pleasure of just joining Chris's board and listening and engaging with so many board members as to what's been happening and how they market the U.S. as a whole. So a resounding round of applause for Chris as he comes to the stage.
Thanks, boss. So good morning, everybody. Happy National Travel and Tourism Week. Thanks for including me. So glad to be here. Moment of reflection first. 2019, record year. 80 million visitors, spent almost $240 billion. Travel and tourism is an export. 9% of everything the largest economy in the world exports, tied to people coming from outside our borders and visiting the U.S. $50 billion positive contribution to our balance of trade, and employing 1.2 million of the over 10 million people in the travel and tourism industry. March 2020, world changed a little bit. Generational pandemic that we've never had to deal with before. Immediately our borders closed. Connectivity, meaning the way people get here, other than the common border we share with Canada and Mexico, but even from those two countries, flights were either eliminated or scaled back because there was nobody traveling on them. Consumer confidence around the world and their ability to travel again anytime in the near future plummeted. What did that mean numbers-wise? 2020, we had a reduction of 76% of visitation to the United States. 2020, we had a reduction of 64% of the total spend, meaning we lost $150 billion contributed to our economy in 2020. So that's enough about reflection, enough about what was. Let's talk about a little bit of optimism. You know, that consumer confidence that was challenged, it was never a demand issue. Our country, our destinations within the country and including our nation's capital, no less aspirational. It's just people couldn't travel. So November 8th of last year, our borders reopened. That's the thing that had to happen for us to get back to any semblance of the numbers. We're starting to see a return in connectivity, meaning flights that were either eliminated brought back, some flights that were some service scaled back are brought back. And we're starting to see consumer confidence rebound. Certainly the uncertainty was attributed first and foremost to the health pandemic and the issues related to that they were dealing with back home and that we were dealing with here. But as we're transitioning from a pandemic to an endemic, I think we can actually see a life after post-COVID in an endemic stage. Certainly the mask mandates are being relaxed, and that's a big help. The final piece to the international travel piece is the pre-departure test that we still require from people, vaccinated visitors coming to the United States. So we're hopeful that at some point we can get to that real quick, and then most all uncertainty would be eliminated, and we get back to some semblance of what we're used to. Our federal government has not been sitting back doing nothing as it relates to travel and tourism. There's a Travel and Tourism Advisory Board for the U.S. Department of Commerce. Over these last 2 years, they've been working on a brand new update of our National Travel and Tourism Strategy. This is how all of federal government supports travel and tourism and all the policies and issues that they touch. We are launching a recovery campaign. Actually, last November when the borders opened, we launched our campaign and we had 3 comms tasks. One is prove we're ready. Certainly getting out and about domestically and the world seeing us traveling around the country and asking them seeing us doing what we're asking them to come back to was a great step toward proving we're ready. We need to welcome the world back. There's been lots of noise over the last 2 years, and I think we need to just remind people why they love the U.S. and why they want to come back. And we're going to do that with our United Stories campaign. We've launched that pre-pandemic. We've carried it through pandemic. It's the whole notion that the story of the United States has been being told by many voices for decades, many perspectives, not the least of which for here in our nation's capital, what Destination D.C. puts out there. So our United Stories is a platform to aggregate all of those voices to tell what is amazing about the United States, all 50 states, 5 territories, and our nation's capital. And then our final task is to entice and convert and push as much as possible to the actual bookings to get back to what we are used to sooner than later. So the prognosticators, the forecasters say that international travel, for all the reasons we talked about, may not return to 2019 numbers till 2025. I'm an eternal optimist, so I have to temper that over these last 2 years. But I feel certain that once we get rid of those last few instances of uncertainty, that we're going to get back to that sooner and later. So in closing, this is our work home. This is where we're headquartered. We're proud that Brand USA is headquartered in our nation's capital. I tell Elliot, I'm the biggest unpaid ambassador to D.C. because I think it's one of the most unappreciated cities in our country. It's always shaped by 24 and 48-hour news cycles, and that literally has nothing to do with what makes D.C. a world-class city. So I'm proud to be a resident. I'm proud to be running a company here in D.C. I appreciate the partnership that we have with you, Mayor, here in our nation's capital, Elliot at Destination D.C., U.S. Travel, and Roger and his team. And I'm really appreciative of the collective efforts of that group and the entire country. When the new spending bill was signed into existence, included in that was the Restoring Brand USA Act, and it allowed us to access some funding from our funding source in a relief mode for us to be able to get back to welcoming the world back. So a big thank you to all of that, and thanks for including me today. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Always looking forward to getting that international traveler back to the U.S. and Washington, of course. So every year we do the U.S. Travel Association does a National Travel and Tourism Week event. And sometimes we think we're the only city that actually has a travel rally, but selfishly, we just want to have the best and the biggest. So we're fortunate, as Chris, Brand USA is headquartered in Washington. U.S. Travel is headquartered in Washington. I see Don Welsh with Destinations International, headquartered in Washington, standing next to Sheriff Caramont, who's the CEO of PCMA, headquartered in Chicago, but he knows where to be. So we're always excited to be able to host and have these great organizations in the city. But this event is very important to us because, again, if we have good news to share, it's a great opportunity for us to do that. Roger Dow and his team have done an amazing job in terms of advocacy for this industry, including the most important dollars that Brand USA has in their budget to promote the U.S. as a destination. And Roger's been busy, pandemic, recovery, dealing with visa-related issues in terms of international visitors coming into the city, and the list goes on and on. And then he had the audacity to have me as his chair for the last couple of years. So he had to deal with me as we navigated so many different things as an industry, including diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it's hard to believe that Roger announced that in July he is retiring. So technically this is his last travel rally in this official capacity, but as Roger said, he's not going anywhere, so I have a feeling we'll continue to invite him to the future travel rallies. But this is our opportunity to hear from him, so please recognize and welcome Roger Dow.
Well, thank you, Elliot. I quieted things down for you. I'm sorry it took a little while. I meant to tell him to stop a little early. Elliot has, the phrase DC cool, and so you got to hire a cool guy to represent the city. So they don't get any cooler than Elliot when you really look at it. And Mayor Bowser, you are the travel and tourism mayor. We had IPW here, which Elliot mentioned a few years ago, which DC did a phenomenal job on. And the mayor was greeting the media, and what you may not know, she started out as a tour guide around, and she actually led a tour of the media, international media, all around the city, which is phenomenal. So, and she hasn't missed one of these. So I appreciate that, Mayor, all you've done. Chris also mentioned the Commerce Department Secretary Raimondo has done a phenomenal job on a national basis. And Chris Thompson, you welcome the world, and so important. And Chris is funded by visitors coming here, kind of unique way, but they haven't been coming here a while. So my colleague Tori Barnes over here and her team and Eric Hansen got Chris $250 million. So he's in good shape. Mayor, you ought to think about that. $5 million, $250 million. Give Elliot a little more money. He can spend it well. But the bottom line, you give Tori 2 coupons because of maybe Chris will buy her dinner. But the bottom line, and Chef Dina Daniel, is there a story about travel and tourism that this isn't this woman? I mean, this epitomizes what it's all about. So terrific. And Don Welsh and Sheriff, you mentioned over there. These guys aren't here because they love Elliot or me. They're here because they're getting one of your coupons for your restaurant. Yeah. But it's great to be here for National Travel and Tourism Week in this phenomenal venue, and to see leaders from all around this fabulous city in every aspect that travel and tourism is so important. And we're here, we talk about the impact of travel and tourism on economy, on jobs and things like that. And it's been 2 long years, and I'm not even going to focus on them. But this theme is about the future of travel and Travel and Tourism Week. I was in Miami 2 days ago. I'll be in Orlando tomorrow and St. Petersburg after that. But I would not miss being here in D.C. for this. When you talk about it, I think talk about the future of travel. Isn't it great to be here, hopping a flight to be here, to be in a venue like this, versus hopping on a Zoom and sneaking a sandwich when you turn off your camera? This is the world we live in. And you talk about the future of travel, it's really to ensure that we're diverse, we're inclusive, we're innovative, sustainable, and globally competitive, and that's so important. When you talk about preparing for the future, it's really the heartbeat of communities. The mayor knows that, everybody does. And to experience D.C. in person, I flew in yesterday morning from Miami, and I saw the signs that things are coming back. Why? Because I saw 3 school trips. 3 school trips, all these with their chaperones, which that's a job I never want, saying okay, and they all have their T-shirts on, and that's a sign it's back when parents are sending their kids to D.C. for school trips. When you really think about it, We're doing this all over the country. Hundreds of communities will be having travel rally days this week to talk about the importance of travel and tourism to our economy and jobs. There's three things part of this theme. One is future of travel is innovation. And you think of all the innovation from roads, from things that are happening right around here, to all the things that in destinations, as the mayor said, something new all the time. It's innovation. And we just recently had a Future of Mobility conference, and I was stunned to talk about and see real things happening. There's a company called Boom that's supersonic travel. They're bringing back, like the Concorde, but supersonic travel, and you're going to be able to go from D.C. to L.A. in like an hour and a half. And how does that change the world? And that's not, it's not a wish. United Airlines already bought 15 of their planes and has an order for 35 more. Hyperloop, that Elon Musk character's got a tube that's going to go like from D.C. to New York at 650 miles an hour. I don't know if I want to be in the middle of that tube if it breaks down, but the bottom line, the future of travel. Helicopters that are going to be like Uber to bring people back and forth. So the future of travel is so important. The other thing is the future of travel really is about facilitating the recovery. I don't have to tell you how important it is. Bringing travel back brings everything back. And it's so essential to our economies, to our businesses, to jobs. And the other thing that I think is so important is global competitiveness. We really, if I said to my children when they were growing up that I grew up with 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. For my children, I added a 4th R, and that was roaming. And I said, if you don't roam around the world, this world will pass you by. And it's so important for us to be global and to have people here and see what's happening, and that's so important. And Brand USA, as I say, is so, so critical to what we do. One of the most important things we have to do is we've got to rebuild the workforce. We really, this is, if there's a pinch point, it's the number at 1.5 million people, and I can do it without my notes. The 1.5 million people that are not back in jobs, the jobs that we can't fill, and we've got to really be thinking about workforce differently. Elliot talked about diversity. He doesn't even talk about diversity, but he's leading the Tourism Diversity Matters group as the chair of bringing back leaders from all around the country and businesses and corporations to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, and how important it is for this. And I really think we've got to reimagine how we look at work. This younger generation, I grew up, I'm a boomer. So the boomer generation, everything changed when what boomers did. Real estate, whatever they did, they followed. Now when you look at millennials, Generation X, they're bigger than the boomers. So there's more of these folks going through, and they're going to define our future. And this group is looking at work differently, different timing, different values, flexibility, reason to be there. What does a company stand for? And we've got to be there in travel and tourism with them. And we've certainly had some troubled times around the world, and we see them all the time. And I think travel is one of the things that really builds understanding. Mark Twain said over 100 years ago, and these words are truer today than ever before, travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness, and that is so true. You know, coming off the pandemic, the one thing that's important is travel and tourism is the front door to economic development. No one ever decided to move to a location, to get a second home somewhere, to move their corporation there, to send their kids to GW or Georgetown or one of the schools here, or to start a business until they traveled here. And you're a great example of traveling somewhere and then starting your new life in your business here, Chef Dina. I think is so important. So we've got a very bright future together, and I'm so glad to be here, so glad to see D.C. I was stunned when I drew from my place over by Chinatown over here and seeing the development in this area. One of my colleagues who lives in that building over there said, hey, this is the new Brooklyn. And it truly is. And I said to the mayor, I said, if I was younger, I'd buy a place over here. She says, what's keeping you? Go buy one. So she's right. So everybody, this is the future of our country. It's the future of our economy and jobs, travel and tourism. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Roger. So as we conclude, I think there's one general consensus that there is a rebound tied to travel to Washington, D.C. and nationally. And we're excited to be able to experience that rebound here in Washington. I'd like to thank Roger, U.S. Travel, and their his amazing team for their support, Deputy Mayor Falchecchio for his support, and of course all that he's doing in the city. The Restaurant Association, Kathy Hollinger, Solomon Keene with the Hotel Association, and as I referenced earlier, Samuel Thomas with Events DC, as we work collectively together to focus on this industry. Our board chair, Stacy Smith, and our amazing board of directors for Destination DC that trusts me and my team to be out doing what we do to promote DC as a destination. And of course, Eden's and the team at Union Market District, and of course Hylon, for hosting us at this amazing venue this morning. Chef Dina, thank you so much for all that you have done for the city. You really epitomize, as Roger says, the who and what is happening in Washington in terms of the international appeal of our destination. Peregrine Espresso for our coffee break, Monumental Sports, and our mascots, Gee Whiz and Slapshot. Take One Production for today's AV. And of course, the entire team from Destination DC wearing red. Make some noise, DDC team. So we remain very optimistic about our future. To our mayor, thank you so much for all that you've done. We are going to continue with questions from the press. I would say to the rest of you, please continue to enjoy this time as we answer any questions that the press may have. Thank you all for joining the travel rally. You all are important to Destination DC, and we'd like to think we're important to you all. So have a fantastic day.